Mendel's research showed that traits are inherited as discrete units. So I guess I should tell you, these are our notes over our first section over heredity that we're going to go over traits, your genes, and your alleles. The first thing is Mendel talked about those traits and how they're inherited from discrete units. Gregor Mendel's laws of genetics apply to all organisms. And if I don't point out that there's a really cute cat, that Mr. Rodier is going to have a cow.
A cat.
A cow?
But all organisms include animals, plants, little single-celled organisms, all of that junk.
Anything living.
Yes.
Okay, so, which you could argue single cells if they're living or not.
Yeah, that's true.
They are.
Alright, anyways, Mendel laid the groundwork for genetics. He studied peas, which is why on that last slide there were peas on there. Okay, sorry. Mendel laid the groundwork for genetics. So, traits are distinguishing characteristics that are inherited. So, things like brown hair, blonde hair, those are traits. Genetics is the study of biological inheritance patterns and variations. Anyone want to expand on?
That's just the definition of genetics.
I guess I can go ahead and put the rest
Yeah.
down.
So Gregor Mendel showed that traits are inherited as discrete units, like we already said. Yay. Important though, Gregor Mendel included that traits are inherited through the passing of factors from parents to offspring.
So he said these factors that you have, called traits, go from your parents to you, and that's how you have these certain traits that you have.
Okay, now the really cool thing about Mendel is that he did all of this way before there was any understanding of what DNA was. You guys know DNA, you probably have in your mind the double helix that we did in class. Okay, none of that was known then, and so that's why he called them factors, because he didn't know anything about genes, didn't know anything about the structure of DNA, just knew there was this vague idea of these factors being passed on from parent to offspring.
He was a really bored monk, and that's why he did this his entire life.
I wouldn't say he was bored. He was a teacher.
It'd be annoying to watch pea plants grow all the time, though.
Well, but if you were working out in the
Mendel
garden...
used pollen to fertilize selected pea plants. So the pea generation, or parent, is what that stands for. He crossed the parents to produce the F1 generation, which is the first generation of kids. Alright? He interpreted the self-pollination process by removing the male flower parts. So he'd go in there and he'd hand select each little male part and cut it off. He'd like pop, 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 pop. And then he'd take his little paintbrush full of pollen and he'd brush the female part of the plant so he could make sure that, this plant mated with this plant, pretty much.
That sounds tedious.
Yes.
Sounds dirty.
I told you he was a bored monk.
Okay, so Mendel allowed the resulting plants then to self-pollinate. So he didn't spend all that time going in and brushing the pollen or the boy parts of the flower onto the girl parts of the flower.
But that was the F1. He didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He allowed the resulting plants.
Yeah.
So the offspring...
Go ahead.
Okay, so he went in with the parent generation and he cut off the parts and did the fertilization for the plants. That way he could control it.
In vitro fertilization.
And then their baby flowers, he allowed them to self-pollinate, or to do it themselves. So among the F1 generation, all plants had purple flowers. The F1 plants are all heterozygous.
And we'll go over what that means in a minute.
Okay, and then among there we go. Among the F2 generation, some plants had purple flowers and some had white. So F2 generation then is going to be the offspring of the F1 generation.
The offspring. So you start off with the parent, one purple, one white. You end up with all purple flowers, their first set of babies. Then you let them have babies, and those babies resulted in some purple and some white.
Yep. And Mendel went, huh? Where did this come from? Okay, which starts our discussion on lots of fun stuff later.
So he observed patterns in the first and second generations of his crosses. So he started looking at these different traits that he saw and trying to figure out how many he was ending up from all these pollinations.
Yeah, Mendel was a mathematician, so just a little bit of history. So that's why he was looking at ratio in there. And he also was a scientist and very observant. Observant? Oh my gosh. Okay, he was studying seven different traits that you can see in this table: pea shape, pea color, flower color, pod shape, pod color, flower position, and plant height. So, and then he went and counted how many of the pea plants, and that is a lot of pea plants to count.
Too.
Well, what did you do when you didn't have texting and TV and all that stuff?
Played with
Watch
peas.
plants grow.
Cut off. Oh, never mind.
All right, so he came up with 3 important conclusions. First one, he said that our traits are inherited as discrete units, that organisms inherit 2 copies of each gene, 1 from each parent, so you get 1 from mom, 1 from dad. The 2 copies segregate during gamete formation. And the last 2 conclusions, meaning the organism inherits 2 copies and that they segregate during gamete formation, is called the law of segregation.
Okay, wait. How are gametes formed again? What's that process called?
Meiosis.
Meiosis.
That you did on the table.
Gametogenesis.
Okay. Go.
Oh, my bad. The same gene can have many versions. A gene is a piece of DNA that directs a cell to make a certain protein. Each gene has a locus, which is a specific position on a pair of homologous chromosomes. So each little gene has an exact spot where you can find it. Yeah, an exact location. So here is going to be if the pea was wrinkled or not. It's in that exact
Yeah, that would be the locus.
Yeah.
On the
gene.
And that is how scientists have now discovered what traits you actually have, is because they know what specific areas to look for that gene in.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And, well, probably, okay. Picture.
An allele is any alternative form of a gene occurring at a specific locus on a chromosome. So each parent donates 1 allele for every gene. So you're going to get 1 from mom, 1 from dad. In these alleles, you're going to have either homozygous, which describes 2 identical alleles for a particular trait. So homo means the same, so they're going to be the same allele. Or heterozygous, which is 2 alleles that are different for a particular trait. Heterozygous means different, so they're going to be 2 different forms of that specific trait.
So the example here shows that this kid got a wrinkled gene from his mom and a wrinkled gene from his dad. So he is homozygous because both alleles he got were wrinkled. Then this other kid is heterozygous because he got a wrinkled gene from his mother and a round gene, I tried to make it real round, but a round gene from his father.
I'm just picturing a kid walking around all wrinkled and one walking around.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is peat plants.
Yeah, pea plants. They can be kids too.
Alright, so genes influence the development of traits. All of an organism's genetic material is called the genome. Hence, the human genome is all of the genetic material in humans. I know, it's confusing. Not really. A genotype refers to the makeup of a specific set of genes, and a phenotype is the physical expression of a trait. So genotype, genes, phenotype, physical.
And like I told my class today, I remember it because P is going to be your physical traits that you see.
And physical starts with
P.
H.
And then your genes are going to be your genotype will be your genes because they both start with gene. So the phenotype would be what you actually see. That would be the hair color, the eye color, the wrinkle or smooth P. Your genes would be the actual genes that would be expressed. For
Like
example, would be
big
big P, little b, little b, little b. This would be
Big B.
black
brown.
or brown.
Sorry, brown. White.
Yes.
The law of dominance states that some alleles are dominant and others are recessive. And you're thinking, duh. A dominant allele is expressed as a phenotype when at least one allele is present. So you will see a dominant allele, we'll do the wrinkled and the round, whenever you have at least one. I should have used R.
I know, I hate W.
I know, let's use R. You will see the round as long as you have one of the dominant traits, which a capital letter is your dominant, a lowercase letter is your recessive. A recessive allele is expressed as a phenotype only when there are two copies present. So you have to have both copies of a recessive trait in order for you to have that phenotype. Dominant alleles are represented by uppercase letters. Recessive alleles are represented by lowercase letters.
Good. Punnett squares, yay, these are fun. Punnett square is a grid system, okay, that is used to help us predict all the possible outcomes of offspring. Okay, all the possible genotypes, I should say, of the offspring. Now, from the genotype, you can figure out what their phenotype will be, as Mrs. Hood just explained.
And these are going to be our possibilities, not actual occurrence. So this is going to tell you the probability of that happening, not it actually happening.
Yep. The boxes show the possible genotypes of the offspring.
So you're going to have one parent here, and these will show the possibilities of what their offspring could express as far as those genes.
Yeah, do you think we should go on how to fill it out?
I think it is next.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there's more.
Oh, there we go. Punnett squares cannot tell the actual results of the genetic cross. It just tells the possibility of those genetic crosses.
Okay.
I want to tell them about unibrows.
Unibrows? What is going on?
I feel like we just went into a weird area.
Okay. Monohybrid cross involves one trait. Okay, mono means one. So monohybrid, just one cross, or one trait that we're looking at. In this case, in the picture, we're looking at flower color. So we have a purple flower and we have a white flower. Okay, a homozygous dominant, let's see.
Yeah, homozygous dominant, that would be the same with the dominant trait. So that means that both traits are going to be the same, like right here, it's FF. Homozygous recessive mean that it's homo is the same, but it's showing both are recessive, like here. It will result in, however, all of your offspring being heterozygous, hetero meaning different, with the dominant trait. So they would all be big F, little f.
So this is like what Mendel did in his experiment. His parent generation, they were homozygous dominant and homozygous recessive, and the F1 generation, they were all heterozygous.
So, no, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, the importance to remember about genotype and phenotype is that a lot of people will say that this parent and all the kids had the same phenotype, because they do, they're both purple, but they have a different genotype because this is big F, and all the kids are big F, little f. So different genotype, but they show the same phenotype, same physical trait.
Alright, now if you take two individuals that are both heterozygous and you cross them together, you're going to get a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. Okay, and the way you set up your ratios, you do your homozygous dominant first, so that's going to be capital F, and then you're going to put in your heterozygous, okay, so big F, and then homozygous recessive, so little f. That's how you set up the ratio.
Always do it in that order.
Yes.
And that way it's a set order, so everybody, if you give them a ratio, they know exactly that this one is talking about your homozygous dominant, this one's talking about your heterozygous, and this one is talking about your homozygous recessive.
Yep. We're going to run out of time.
Yes, we are. It's okay. Test crosses is a cross between organisms with an unknown genotype and an organism with a recessive phenotype. So this will just tell you with the recessive trait that you know it's present, and that you can know the possibilities of the outcome. Yes.
Yeah, next.
For a recessive trait, white flower, to show both alleles must be recessive. You gotta read the stars, man.
Okay, and probability is going to be the likelihood that something will happen. Probability can be used to predict the traits of an offspring produced by a genetic cross. Probability applies to such random events as meiosis and fertilization, and so the probability that a coin will flip Flip land tails up is 1/2.
Each time you do it. And if that's too fast, pause it and read it.
And read these things. And also to let you know, it'll always be 1